talked a little bit about communication in dogs in previous episodes, and that most of their communication is body language. However, the growl is probably the most recognized and one of the most often misunderstood forms of communication that dogs use.
I could be a mess, stressed in yesterday. He don't care less, he sees me anyway. Yeah, he sees me anyway. My dog thinks I'm great, he thinks I'm number one. He never hates, even when I'm done.
Welcome to Dog Leads with my dad, Steve Bishop. He's a certified dog trainer, has a BA in psychology with a minor in sociology. My dad is a Family Paws parent educator and a member of the Pet Professional Guild. If you have questions or would like to suggest a topic, you can reach him at bishopsgatetraining@gmail.com.
This episode is brought to you by It Goes Without Saying, what our dogs are trying to tell us. It will be presented by my dad on January 10th. This presentation will help you improve the relationship with your dog by teaching you their language. Pre-registration is required, and there will be a link in the description.
I wanted to start off talking a little bit about the 4 quadrants of operant conditioning, only insofar as when a dog growls, they are adding something to get a response, usually to increase distance, meaning have you move away or stop doing what you're doing, which is also a form of distance increasing. But again, we won't go too far into it. But so the 4 quadrants are positive punishment, positive reinforcement, negative punishment, and negative reinforcement. When we talk about reinforcement, what we mean is it just increases the likelihood that something is going to happen. For example, when we're training, ask the dog to sit, we give them a treat. We've added something, the cue, to increase the likelihood that the dog is going to sit. And likewise, the dog sits, they add something, and something is added, usually food reinforcer, when we are first acquiring that behavior. And I won't go too far into that either, because that's just a whole other topic. So reinforcement is increasing the likelihood of a behavior to occur. Punishment is decreasing the likelihood of a behavior to occur. I don't know, for example, you yell at the dog and they stop chewing on the coffee table leg. So you've added something positive, the yelling, and it decreases the behavior of chewing on that coffee table. Punishment, it's not necessarily good or bad, it's just decreasing the likelihood. And I've talked also about when I was taking art classes, we would critique each other's work every week. That was adding something, the critique, to decrease the likelihood of poor composition or poor technique, whatever. So it's decreasing the likelihood of that to occur. When we talk about positive, this is where it gets kind of confusing, because positive punishment could be like the hitting, things like that. Positive in the scientific sense, it just means something added. So the way I remember it is positive is represented by a plus, just like on a battery. The positive end, plus sign, means to add, so you're adding something. Then negative means you're taking something away. Negative is represented by a minus. Minus means subtracting something or taking it away. How this applies is when the dog growls, they are adding something to increase the likelihood of something happening, like leaving them alone, or decreasing the likelihood of something to happen, like, I don't know, petting them where they're in pain or have a sore spot. The British Small Animal Veterinary Association several years ago came out with what they call the ladder of aggression. So very low level stress signals are things like yawning, lip licking. A little bit higher is what we call look away, where the dog won't make eye contact. Turning the body away or a walk away, where they actually physically get up and walk away from the situation or try to. Creeping with the ears back, the tail tucked, and everybody's probably seen that in scared or timid dogs. Lying down with the leg up, that's an appeasement signal, or I'm no threat, please leave me alone or stop bothering me. Then we have the stiffening and the staring. Then we have the growling. That's the last step before a snap and then a bite. The thing to understand about this ladder of aggression is these steps or rungs may not occur in order. They can happen in any order, and they may skip some steps altogether. Notice that the growling is right before the snap and the bite. So why do dogs growl? Well, it may be uncomfortable or in pain. And if you're, Malcolm had a surgery on his shoulder recently. If I was petting him, I was very careful not to bother his shoulder because it's probably still a little tender, or it was right after the surgery, and that might evoke a growl if I touch that sore area. There's also resource guarding. It's like, hey, I'm letting you know I'm not comfortable with you getting so close. And keep in mind, I talked about in a previous episode also, aggression is almost always fear of losing comfort or safety, so that resource guarding, they may growl for that. Growls can also be part of play. So, for example, Talbot, he was a very vocal player. He would be out running around with the dogs that he was familiar with. They're playing, he's having a grand old time. People would ask me, why is Talbot so pissed off? And I would tell him, look, he's not. Ears are floppy, his body's loose, tail has that really nice broad wag. He's not tensing up. He's not, giving the other dogs this hard stare. I can't say he wasn't snapping because he was play biting, but it wasn't aggressive. And he just happened to be a vocal player. He growled and he barked a lot when he was playing. This kind of goes back to something I talk about in my body language presentations, that you have to look at the whole dog and the whole situation. You can't just take one element and say, oh, that means dog's about to bite, or that means the dog is comfortable. You have to take everything in context. Another reason the dog might growl is for control. So they're trying to control their comfort level or their environment, their perceived safety. So again, this goes back to that fear of losing safety or comfort. And then if they're working. So a good example of that, my dad did volunteer work for the police station back in Virginia when we lived there. And he came into the station one evening, and the officer that was canine handler was in the station with his dog. My dad says, oh, can I pet your dog? And the officer said, probably not a good idea. He's been working and he's still in that mode. So we want to be careful if the dog is working and say, oh, he's so cute, and run up and pet him. And it's like, well, this dog's already focused on something else. You want to leave them alone until they've calmed down and they've gotten out of that mode of focusing on the task at hand, which in this case was the canine work. So the thing we want to keep in mind about the growling is if you're punishing the growl, it only confirms the dog's fears, or if they're playing, it confuses them, or it could potentially cause the dog to attack if it's a resource guarding situation or if they're in that working mode. So what do we do when the dog growls? It's not enough to stop the dog from growling because the urge is still there. So if, again, the resource guarding, if you punish them for growling, that growl is taking away. The next time you get too close to the dog while they have that food, that toy, whatever it is they're guarding, they're more likely to just skip that step that's very obvious to us and go straight to the snap or the bite. So you want to stop what you're doing, analyze the situation. And again, this goes back to look at the whole dog. Are they just playing, or is it one of those control situations or fear-based situations? Look at the whole situation, figure out what's going on, and then you want to find a different approach. So if the dog has something that they're not supposed to and they're resource guarding that, you may want to find something that's a higher value, but it's only temporary. So like a really good piece of meat or cheese, get that object they're resource guarding away, but then they get reinforced for letting go of that. It's not going to make them guard that object more. It's going to teach them it's okay to leave it alone, and I'm going to get something really good in exchange. So the next step, we want to evaluate the stressors. What is causing the dog to get to that point where they're growling? And this kind of goes back to that analyzing the situation. The difference is that analyzing, we're trying to figure out if the growl is aggressive or if it's just play. Evaluating the stressors is what's causing that situation. So is it resource guarding? Are they afraid of losing that comfort because they're on the couch and they know you're going to make them get off? Then you want to institute a behavior modification plan. So talk to a trainer, find some better alternative that is appropriate. So instead of resource guarding the food, you can give them a treat. Instead of laying on the couch and resource guarding that, you can get them a really nice dog bed, train them that that's a comfortable and a safe place to be. And of course, as I always talk about, find a good educated trainer to help you through these situations if that's what's needed. So we never want to punish a growl. Dogs do not have the benefit of speaking English, so they use the tools that they're given. Growl may be the last step before a snap, and if that warning is taken away, there's one less warning before a bite does occur. So this is a very clear warning, should be addressed, not eliminated. So this is a really short one this week, but we are right before Christmas. But I did want to get something out for everybody. I have a couple of big programs planned for after the first of the year, so stay tuned for those. There's probably going to be 2-3 part series, but I'm doing the research and I'm putting together a lot of information and I'm really excited about it, and I will have those in January. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, or as always, you can email me at bishopsgatetraining@gmail.com.